Hi again. Welcome to Growing Our Own, Building Early Childhood Education Career Pathways in Native Communities. And we're excited to have you all join us for this session today during the ACF Indigenous Programs Conference. Before we begin, we will be sharing some instructions on how you can interact during the session.
Hello, everyone. We're so happy to have you. I'm Brent Huggins, and I will be the ACF room monitor for this workshop. And I'm going to quickly go over a few housekeeping items before we turn it over to the presenters. If you have a question during the presentation, please submit them in the chat. I will monitor these throughout the Q&A session or throughout the presentation for the Q&A. If you have any questions during the Q&A, please raise your hand in Zoom located at the bottom of your screen, or you can submit a question in the chat box. We will try to get to as many of them as we possibly can. Please note that I will also provide a survey link for the workshop for this session in the chat box, and we would really appreciate capturing your feedback and thoughts on this session, which you can do by taking the survey after the workshop. I will also provide the link again at the end of the session, and the survey link can be found on the live agenda of the ACF website, along with this session's presenter handouts for you to download. Finally, as a quick reminder, all workshop sessions are being recorded for on-demand viewing via the 2022 ACF IPC website until April 25th, 2022. Please visit the live agenda page if you would like to view these recordings after the conference. And now I'll turn it back over to our facilitator and presenter, Alita Meyer.
Thank you, Brent. So in today's panel, we have invited two ACF grantees to share about their efforts to build early childhood education career pathways. I'm Alita Meyer, and I'm from the Office of Planning, Research, and Evaluation at ACF, known as OPRE, and I'll be the facilitator. I'll begin our session by providing a little bit of background about what inspired this workshop. Our first presentation will be given by Jennifer Amaya Thompson of Head Start and Cindy Odell of the Stone Child Community College. They will talk about approaches for growing our own in tribal colleges and university Head Start Partnerships program. Second, Dr. Michelle Sarche of the Centers for American Indian and Alaska Native Health and Dr. Allison Barlow of the Center for American Indian Health will share approaches that the Tribal Early Childhood Research Center takes for growing our own. Then we will have time for questions. So since the summer of 2016, so about 6 years ago, staff from OPRE have been convening monthly and quarterly meetings to facilitate an ACF-wide discussion about all things related to data with Native communities. This informal conversation is an opportunity for program and evaluation offices to share about what is happening across ACF that we might not otherwise know. In addition to learning about what is happening, we strive to follow the call to action of the Roadmap for Collaborative and Effective Evaluation in Tribal Communities. The roadmap offers practical approaches for intentionally building a new narrative on research and evaluation in Indigenous communities. In our ACF-wide discussions, we're working together to change that narrative. So if you're not familiar with the roadmap, here's a picture of it, and I'll give you a little bit of background. In 2012, the Children's Bureau convened a tribal evaluation work group to develop a product informed by Indigenous ways of knowing that would assist in building credible, relevant, and adaptable evidence across communities. The work group decided to create a roadmap to guide a new narrative. This is a picture of the roadmap. The document itself is included as a resource for the workshop. Down the center of this picture is the backbone of the new narrative, which aspires for collaborative, culturally responsive evaluation, system improvement, locally guided questions, data and insight, meaningful analysis, bidirectional learning, and American Indian Alaska Native evaluation skills. The two levers of action for the roadmap are represented by the turquoise and orange half-moon swashes that you see. These are two big areas where in the past there was very little going on, and that led to many problems with research and evaluation. The turquoise lever is about building relationships. Examples are evaluation practice that involves the community in determining priorities. and dialogue with community to anchor evaluation within cultural and ethical practices. The orange lever is about knowledge and skill building. Examples are storytelling to support staff and community interpretation of evaluation data, and training in the use, interpretation, and storage of data. You can see on the bottom of the picture of the roadmap that there is one box that crosses both the turquoise and the orange levers. This is a really important box. This is the one that represents the cross-cutting priority of growing our own. So developing policies, establishing clear guidelines, and building tribal infrastructure. So growing our own has become a priority in many tribal communities with a focus on the training and career development of tribal members. So at our ACF-wide discussion this fall, when we were talking about possible workshops for this conference, we thought it would be great to share examples of how ACF is supporting Native communities in growing their own, not just in research and evaluation, but for early childhood. Wow, I just did something fast there. Okay, sorry for the, hope nobody's roads seasick. So not just in evaluation and research, but for early childhood education career pathways. It's imperative that these infrastructures be built in place within communities, and we're excited for you to learn about these two examples. So now I'm going to hand it over to Cindy, who's going to share her screen.
Hi, and through the time that Cindy is going to begin to share her screen, I would like to introduce myself. I am Jennifer Maya from the Office of Head Start. I am the content lead on areas related to equity, inclusiveness, culture, and language, and I'm also the Federal Project Officer for the Tribal Colleges and Universities. Thank you so much, Cindy. What we wanted to go over today, we wanted to just provide you with an overview about the Tribal Colleges and Universities, an initiative through the Office of Head Start to support Native American communities, Native American programs to increase access to higher education opportunities for Head Start Native American communities within the work that we do. And also, of course, we wanted to provide you with a specific example, Cindy Odell from Stone Child, who will be introducing and sharing how her community is growing their own within the tribal colleges and universities. Cindy, do you want to say hi?
Hello, everybody. Thank you, Jennifer.
Of course. Yes. Next slide, please. So here, I just wanted to set up the context and to provide you an overview about the work that we do at the Office of Head Start. So on a daily basis, we serve over about 1 million children across the country. And we also make sure that our children are receiving the school readiness supports that they need, that they receive comprehensive services as well, and they thrive in the communities to reach their full potential. Specifically for our presentation today, you can see the information related to our Native American communities, our American Indian and Alaska Native programs. We have about 217 programs that are served through different states in the nation. And we have about 23,000 children, Native American children, that receive Head Start and early Head Start services. And also what we know is that our staff, we have over 7,100 staff, and of those, about 3,200 of them are former parents. We know that the majority of our staff in Native American communities are from the tribal local communities. And we also know that our programs are culturally and linguistically responsive to the needs of the communities they serve. What we also have learned through our data collection is that over the majority of the language that is spoken by the children in Native American communities is English. And although we know that this is the current status, we know that we wanted to really continue to support tribal language revitalization efforts for Native American communities. So that is a lot of the work that is taking place right now. So next slide, Cindy. So one of the pieces that we know why this initiative was really important for our tribal communities is because we learn about the different challenges that our communities face. We know that there are challenges in really having a staff with a degree in early childhood that also meeting the credential requirements and that they are culturally and linguistically responsive to the needs of Native American communities. We also know that there are other challenges like lack of childcare, geography, challenges, and then we also know the internet had big issues in our Native American communities. But we found to be more interesting was related to the percentage of staff, education staff, that is lacking a credential education requirement. So we knew that, and this data is pre-COVID. So I wanted to make that emphasis because we know that where we are now, probably these numbers or the percentages are even higher. But what we knew then back in 2019 was that about 23% of the teachers in Head Start and Early Head Start programs did not have an associate degree. We also knew that about 60% of our assistant teachers didn't have a CDA, and we knew that about 33% of the teachers in Head Start and Early Head Start programs did not have a CDA requirement. So next slide, please. So in 2021, actually in 2020, we had an opportunity to reestablish the tribal colleges and universities Head Start partnership, really to increase the opportunity for Native American communities to increase access to higher ed. So what we wanted to make sure is that we have the opportunity for the staff in their own communities, from their own communities, to access these opportunities through the tribal colleges and universities. We also knew that this is an impact, not in the short term, but it has future impact in growing and preparing future generations. Next slide, Cindy. So I just wanted to highlight some of the key elements of the tribal colleges and universities partnership, but there are many, many more. But some of them, it really helped us to have this strong and personal support for the Native American communities through the tribal colleges and universities. We knew that it was very important to provide the flexibility to tribal colleges and universities because they know their own communities and how they're reaching and connecting with the staff and the parents and the children and the students. We also have through the colleges, they are providing more, making sure that curriculum is involving cultural and linguistic responsiveness. And then there is this grant also provides with support for tuition, books, and other costs associated with the tribal colleges and universities partnerships. Next slide, Cindy. So really quickly, I know I don't have too much time. I'm hoping that I'm staying within my time frame. But what I wanted to demonstrate here for you is really the bigger picture of the benefits of the tribal colleges and universities as of right now. So as you can see, although these are the 6 grantees, you have Navajo Technical University, Salish Kootenai, Stone Child, White Earth Community College, Fond du Lac Community College, and Chandeska. You can see that in the awardees or the partners is a huge number of other colleges and universities that are also impacted by these tribal colleges and universities partnership. And then we are hoping that by the end of the year 2025, we will have over 500 students graduating with a higher education degree that will continue to support their own local communities, their own tribal staff, and the children, so that we are accomplishing and moving this effort forward. So as you think about growing our own, I am so honored and proud that we are moving this work together. So that's it for me. So I'm transitioning back to you, Cindy. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you for providing such a nice framework and overview and giving it that level of importance of the work that we do. I also want to say before I start, just what a pleasure and honor it is to be able to work with Jennifer and the staff at the Office of Head Start. They are so professional and so supportive that you see each of these institutions across here that are reflected in these grants. They just want us to all be successful, and they do whatever they can to help that success happen. Because when we're successful at our institutions, it means our students are being successful in their careers and in their courses, which means their impact is down to the Head Start children and families. So I'm the project director for the grant that was submitted by Stone Child College and funded by the Office of Head Start. And we submitted our grant with 6 goals in mind. And the first of our goals is to increase the number of Head Start and early Head Start teachers to earn a CDA, an associate's degree, a bachelor's degree, or a master's degree in early childhood education. We wanted to make a difference on those demographics that Jennifer just pointed out about how many teachers are needed to be qualified to serve Head Start children and families. The second goal of our project is really this belief of growing your own. And that is that we didn't want to do the work by ourselves, but we wanted to partner with 3 other TCUs in order to support them in their work to partner with their community Head Start program and implement an associate's degree or a CDA that could be delivered to their Head Start teachers on their reservation. The third goal was we knew technology was going to be an important skill and an important resource for our teachers. So we wanted to make sure that we were addressing technology needs of our Head Start teachers so that they could be successful in their courses. And they could also use technology as a tool as they work with children and families. The fourth of our goals was to make sure that our courses and our programs were using the most up-to-date information about quality post-secondary early childhood education. We wanted to make sure we were including things like trauma-informed practices and how to support children and families with social and emotional development. The fifth goal was we wanted to increase the skills of our Head Start teachers. It wasn't just enough to have a number and counting how many teachers we awarded degrees, but we wanted to know that we were making a difference in their practice. And that's also seen in goal 6, where we wanted to know, were we making an impact on teacher attendance and teacher retention at Head Start programs? So this next slide shows where we're located. This is the Rocky Boy Reservation, this little red spot right here in the middle of Montana. We call this the High Line, where it's up against the border of Canada. So Rocky Boy Reservation is where Stonechild College is located. So we're also partnering to the west with Blackfeet Community College and the Blackfeet Head Start Center. To the east, we're partnering with Fort Belknap Head Start and Ani Nakota College. Farther east, we have Fort Peck College that we're partnering with, and they're supporting their relationship with their Head Start program. You can see the other reservations are also indicated on this map, and they're shaded because we're not partnering with them as part of our grant from the Office of Head Start, but we are partnering with them in other ways that I'll talk about here in just a little bit. So Stonechild College believed very strongly in the concept of growing our own teachers. And they were the second tribal college in Montana to be able to offer a bachelor's degree in elementary education. They are partnering with the Rocky Boy Head Start, and this grant has been so wonderful to support this relationship. They are right next door to the college and are going to be part of our advisory board. And just, I don't know, building this relationship has been so impactful for the college and for the Head Start program. Ani Nakota College is located on Fort Belknap Reservation. And I have to say, one of the most remarkable things that happened with this partnership was a meeting in which the president of Ani Nakota College, Sean Chandler, and the president of Stonechild College, Corey Sangre Billy, and the director of the Fort Belknap Head Start, Rose Doney, met, and we had lunch at the golf course in Havre. And we talked about how to support Rose's program, Head Start program, in order to get their teachers enrolled in programs and supporting their professional development. It was just so incredibly powerful and amazing to see college presidents come together to talk about early childhood and giving it that level of importance. Blackfeet Community College is another one of our partners. And one of the cool things about Blackfeet Community College is they hired an early childhood instructor from the grant support. And when they looked at giving her an office space, they wanted to build their relationship with their Head Start program there on the Blackfeet Reservation. And so the early childhood education instructor is now housed. Her office and her classroom are actually located at the Head Start Center there on the Blackfeet Reservation. Just incredible way to build that partnership. Fort Peck Community College is partnering with Fort Peck Head Start. And one of the cool things about this partnership is that they started the program with 2 early childhood students seeking an associate's degree. They were concerned more about elementary and it was grant driven. But when this program came along, they recruited more students, and we now have 13 students enrolled in an early childhood associate's degree program, which is pretty incredible, from 2 to 13 in 1 year. Our other partner is the University of Montana Western in Dillon. And Dylan is delivering their Bachelor of Science Early Childhood program online, but also providing on-site and online mentorship support. So this is the graph of our numbers that we had anticipated serving. And you can see, for example, the only ones looking at CDA were Blackfeet Community College. And you can see the other degrees, associates, bachelors. And it was really exciting because here's our actual numbers. So although we only anticipated serving 5 students in a master's program, we had 8 students apply. And I can't say no. And so we redid our budget and we worked things because, again, when we look at building the capacity of our reservations, having teachers with master's degrees that can come and teach these higher level classes is really important and was part of our strategic plan. The other thing that's exciting is although we only have 54% of our students enrolled right now, if our goal is 107, a lot of the students that are in a program, say for example at BCC, we have 16 students working on a CDA. Most of these students are planning on going to get their associate's degree and their bachelor's degree. We had several students talk to their instructor and they said, you know, I didn't think I could do college, but I'm doing it. And so I want to go and get more than just my CDA. So that is just incredibly empowering, and it's happening at each community and at each tribal college. We wrote our grant knowing the challenges ahead of us. Jennifer mentioned a few of these. We know that Head Start teachers don't have a lot of time. They work very hard, very long hours. They don't have a lot of money to spend on higher education. So we designed our grant to provide them this type of support. The other thing that was really, I think, very critical work that we accomplished in our first year was we aligned each of our programs with the University of Montana Western so that there was a clear articulation and a clear pathway. So students didn't have to take classes again and again as they moved from college to college, as they often do. And there was a seamless path for graduation. The opportunities and challenges and solutions that we focused on, we've really focused on our distance learning opportunities and web-based classes that could be taken asynchronously during students' hours that they had available. This model has been successful for some of our students, but for some of our students, it has been too much. One of the things that is critical about the work that we're doing here is that the students were being assessed by their online chats. So in these asynchronous programs, everything is posted online in writing. And a lot of our students were hesitant to put things in writing. We had one student who hadn't checked in for 2 weeks. And when the instructor contacted her, she verbalized how afraid she was to put anything in writing. And we had another student who was waiting for the Zoom meetings to start. So we had a lot of work to do, catching everybody up to get confident and comfortable using technology, but we also knew we needed some face-to-face mentorship. So what we did is we hired a mentor that tried to connect, well, that is connecting, not trying, she's connecting what students are doing in their classroom with students to the courses that they're taking at the university. And again, we're looking at different ways for students to come together and reflect on what they're doing. So it's not just enough that they're doing things in the classroom, but they need opportunities to reflect on what they're doing, reflect on how they could do it differently, and reflect on the importance of that growth. We wanted to use a cohort model because we believed very strongly that students needed to come together and share their experiences. We had a meeting this last week where students in the master's program came together and they just said over and over how much better they felt knowing that they weren't the only ones struggling or the only ones that felt a certain way. So this cross-cultural relationships building is very important part of our work as we grow our own. The other thing that we've done as a offshoot of our grant with the Office of Head Start is we've applied for funding under the American Indian College Fund. And we've also used this funding to partner with an organization called Healing Your Almond. And Healing Your Almond is a business that was started by Franchon Francis that looks at trauma-informed practices that will help us to heal from trauma. So this group is This picture here is taken from our Healing Your Almond event, in which we had faculty from each of our institutions that we are partnering with. And this is our mentor right here, Terry Barkley. So Terry she does amazing work. She is available 24/7 for students online. And like I said, she's visiting each of our campuses and providing some face-to-face support. I love this slide because this comes from Fran Sean's training. So it gives you an idea of the work that she's doing with us. But I love it because it's talking about connections in our brain, but it's also talking about the connections we need with others. And one of the things that I think is so important as we talk about growing our own, that it doesn't mean we have to do it on our own. That by partnering and branching out and reaching other institutions and other organizations, that it just enhances the work that we do and it supports us even more. So now we have a partnership opportunity with all of Montana TCU colleges coming together. In fact, we have written a proposal to the American Indian College Fund asking them to support an early childhood higher education consortium with Montana TCUs and our partnering institution with University of Montana Western. Another exciting offshoot of this grant has been that Stonechild College has developed and will be implementing fall 22 bachelor's degree in early childhood education. So again, now we're going to be looking at articulation agreements using our curriculum and approaching our TCU sisters. These TCU to TCU partnerships are just so incredibly important. I can't say enough about them. I was visiting with Dr. Michael Munson at Salish Kootenai College. She's the director of Native American Studies, and she is just an incredible wealth of information about Native language teacher education. And when I contacted her about supporting Stonechild with their efforts in language revitalization, she was so excited to be working with her other sister schools. Also, we're looking at becoming part of a team on Early EdU and working with Montana State University and University of Montana. So very quickly, lessons learned. I think being flexible and open to new ideas and recognizing how support needs to be individualized. There's not a formula. We have guidelines, but we also know we need to be flexible. Also having a clear vision of what we want to accomplish and why, and keeping students on that focus. They're a #1 priority. We've learned how important communication is. I don't think it can be understated. And now that we're open to meeting face-to-face, like when the 2 presidents came together, I'm really looking forward to more of those types of meetings. We've also learned the importance of social justice and how important that work is on equity. We've had students who have been held hostage to student debt, who were told they couldn't attend post-secondary because they had a past amount due and had been reported to creditors. So we had to find ways, working with Montana University of Western and their foundation, to pay off this debt and get them reconnected and re-enrolled in higher education again. And lastly, how important it is to learn from data from our students, from our partners, and celebrating success. Celebrating success to us means celebrating our students. At the last year's gathering of tribal colleges and universities under this grant, we had been asked to select a student that exemplified success. And we selected Monique Rivas, who was a Blackfeet Community College AA graduate. Monique has gone on to earn she earned her associate's degree and now is going on for her bachelor's degree. But we selected Monique because she really exemplifies the values that we think are so important as we grow our own, that she wants to give back. Education wasn't just about her, but what she could do with it for her family to better her life, her family's life, and her communities. So with that, I'd like to say Kita Tamiyan, thank you. This is our logo that we've developed. This says Stonechild College, Early Childhood Education. And the name of our project is To Come Together for Our Children. So thank you everyone for this opportunity. And I will turn it back to Alita.
Thanks so much, Cindy. And I am going to hand it over to Michelle.
Hi, everyone, and thank you, Cindy and Jennifer, for such a lovely presentation. It was really wonderful to learn about the work that is happening. And your last point there on data, Cindy, is a good segue or transition over to our part of the presentation, which is focused on the Tribal Early Childhood Research Center and what we are doing through the TRC to support the early childhood education career pathways in Native American communities. I'm joined today by my colleague, Allison Barlow, And I'll be turning over things to her in just a little bit. And she also is going to share some examples of some of the early childhood educators whose career pathways we have supported through the TRC. So next slide. So in our brief presentation today, I see among some of the participants, some of our TRC friends and colleagues. So some of you may already know about who the TRC is, what we do and how we do it. So that'll be a refresher for those of you that we've had the honor and privilege to work with over all these years. We've been funded since 2005 from the Administration for Children and Families, the Office of Planning, Research and Evaluation. So we've been at this for quite a while, and it is just truly the honor of my life to be able to do this work in partnership with tribal communities and tribal early childhood professionals and program leaders. So anyway, I'm going to share a little bit about who we are, what we do, and how we do it for those of you who may not be familiar with the work of the TRC. I'll also just put in a plug. Our contact information is at the end, and through the TRC, we manage a listserv. And there's all kinds of really, really exciting things happening across the country. And those things cross my desk, and I've become a relay station for getting out all kinds of information about all of the opportunities for our tribal communities happening. So just a plug to shoot me an email if you would like to be added to that listserv. I see the TRC as an opportunity to really connect so many people, and you'll see that on the next slide when I share about who we are. And then the other goal is to highlight 3 specific TRC efforts that help support early childhood education career pathways in Native communities. And the 3 examples I'm going to give, I don't point this out on the slides, but as Lita was presenting the roadmap, the 3 examples that I'm going to give really connect to elements in that backbone or that centerpiece of the roadmap, specifically around bidirectional learning, AIAN evaluation, I would argue also research skill building, and locally guided questions and insights. So I'll say a little bit more about that in just a second. Next slide, Alita. So who we are. As I was sharing, the TRC, and I realize this is like a big collection of names and groups and people, and I'm going to walk you through it in just a second. But really, this is to just share with you all that the TRC is a very large partnership network. And again, we've been doing this work since 2005. So in a couple of years, that will be 20 years that we've been doing this work. And we have built, sustained, and grown this network over the last 18 years, I guess. I can't do math so quickly on the fly here, but over a long time, certainly over a decade, pushing 2 decades. And so I'm going to walk you through who we are. So next slide, Alita. So the TRC is based, oops, you were right with the leadership team, the one before. So the TRC, so I'm on the previous slide, Alita. Sorry about that. Thank you. The TRC is based out of the University of Colorado, Anschutz Medical Campus, Centers for American Indian and Alaska Native Health, which is where I work along with my colleagues here. But the TRC is a partnership between 5 university and research groups: Michigan State University, Johns Hopkins Center for American Indian Health, the Brazelton Touchpoint Center at Boston Children's, Harvard University Medical School, and Child Trends. And all of you on here may have had interactions with any or all of those groups in your own work. And we're funded through a cooperative agreement. So that means that we work very closely with ACF, specifically and especially the Office of Planning, Research, and Evaluation. So that's what we call our leadership team. And then moving to the next slide, Alita, we've been guided in, since 2005, since the very, very beginning, by a steering committee. And our steering committee is made up of individuals in each of these 4 groups. especially and importantly, tribal home visiting, Head Start, childcare, and imminently tribal TANF partners. We just received some supplemental funding to do some family economic well-being work. And so we'll be weaving that as an additional thread through our work. TRC organizational partners, academic partners. We have researchers at other institutions across the country on our steering committee, and tribal community leader partners. Next slide. We also work really closely with all of the ACF early childhood program offices, home visiting, Head Start, childcare, and the Office of Family Assistance, which houses TANF. Next slide. And we also partner with other ACF funded early childhood initiatives. We hope to strengthen our connections with the Tribal College and Head Start partnership grants. I've been involved a little bit and look forward to working even more closely with you all. But certainly with the grantees under Head Start, home visiting, and childcare, and with some of the other, with the national training and technical assistance programs. And then the last group is that we work closely also with the national associations that represent Head Start, home visiting, and childcare. Next slide. So what we do, that's who we are, what we do. All of what we do falls under national leadership, pilot research, and strategic dissemination. I don't have time to go into all of the things that we do in each of those areas. But suffice to say, those are the kinds of things that we focus our work on. And what you see here is our model, if you will, for how we do our work. So really what's most important to take away from this image is that through strategic dissemination and engagement and communication and collaboration and dialogue with researchers, federal partners, the TA network, tribal early childhood programs, and tribal leaders, through that cycle of communication, as if you will, that is what is at the center of what we do. And so actually, if you go to the next slide, that gets at the how of what we do. Everything we do is in partnership with collaboration and through what we call communities of learning. Next slide. So I'm going to talk a little bit about very specifically examples of how the TRC supports connections between research and practice for early childhood educators. We do that by creating opportunities for practitioner, researcher dialogue and exchange. And again, I'm going to give a specific example of that. Collaborating with early childhood practitioners to design, implement, and disseminate research, and by supporting early childhood practitioners in their educational pathways. Next slide. So the Native Children's Research Exchange is an example of a way that we create space for practitioner, researcher dialogue and exchange. And this really connects to the roadmap's bi-directional learning goal. And the Native Children's Research Exchange is a biennial conference. That pattern of conferences has been disrupted by the pandemic, but we are going to have a conference this September in Denver. These pictures that you see are from our conference in 2019, and it is really a space that truly fosters open exchange of ideas, dialogue, bi-directional learning, and there are a lot of collaborations that emerge from our NCRE, as we call it, meetings. And so you can learn more about NCRE there through the links on this slide. Our NCRE Scholars Program, just as a side note, we also support the career development of early career Native researchers who are pursuing child development research careers. And so you can learn more about all of the scholars that we've worked with. There have been 27 PhD level Native researchers that we've supported over the years. Next slide. And then an example of collaborating to design, implement, and disseminate research. This connects to the part of the roadmap that calls us to do more locally guided questions and to gather more locally guided insight and questions. And so through our TRC communities of learning, one example is a community of learning that was focused on really understanding how early developmental screeners work or do not work for tribal children or in tribal settings. And so at our website, you can download some resources that came out of that work that are geared for both practitioners as well as parents, and provide some guidance on how to get the most out of the developmental screening process, both from the practitioner side and the parent side. And so that was a collaboration of researchers and practitioners who came together to design this qualitative study to learn more about developmental screeners in tribal settings. Next slide. And then last, and I'm going to turn it over to Allison in just a second, the TRC Summer Institute at Johns Hopkins is an example of what the TRC is doing to directly support the educational pathways of early childhood practitioners in tribal communities. So the pictures that you see there are from our last in-person Summer Institute, which was in 2019. Typically those have been held at Johns Hopkins, which is in Baltimore. And as you can see from the picture at the top, students come from all over the country and participate in week-long 2-credit courses, and they can work towards a certificate in American Indian Health. And a course that we've developed through the TRC is early childhood research with tribal communities. And that course is really designed both for researchers who may not have focused on early development in tribal communities, but most importantly, it's really geared towards early childhood practitioners who may want to learn more about how they can be informed consumers of research, to use the research that's out there to inform their early childhood practice, program policies, that kind of thing, and also to be better positioned to be co-collaborators and co-creators of research that affects their programs and Native children more broadly. So next slide. So over the years since 2013, there have been 123 students from tribal communities all across the country that have taken our early childhood research with tribal communities course. And over those years, we've supported 45 Indigenous and allied scholars with scholarships through the TRC to take that course either in person, or this last summer 2021, we offered the course virtually. And then we've provided an additional 12 scholarships to students to take other Johns Hopkins Summer Institute courses, for example, if they're pursuing their American Indian Health Certificate. So anyway, I'm going to turn it over to Allison, who's going to share a couple of case examples, if you will, of students who have taken our course and how they've used it in their early childhood career development pathways.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Michelle. And I just want to point out on this slide, the two beautiful women who are holding up their certificates actually took the early childhood course, but also went on to complete their entire certificate, which offers 18 graduate credits toward a degree in public health anywhere in the United States. So it's a great jumping board onto other graduate programs in the United States. And this space just provides an incredible safety and I think beauty for Indigenous scholars to meet and to really advance public health understanding of how to best serve early childhood development in Indigenous communities. And I always say that I think the best architects of public health from the very beginning have been Indigenous peoples, because they look at health holistically and they embrace that all living things are essential to the health of the planet and the universe. So next slide, I'm just going to go through a couple great examples of profiling some of the scholars, just so you can get a sense. So here is is Jacqueline Tutt from the Dene Nation. And she was selected for the 2019 Early Childhood Scholarship. She also continued to go to other summer institutes at Johns Hopkins after this first course, and now is enrolled in her Master's of Public Health at NAU. She's collaborated with Navajo Nation Head Start to develop a parent-child questionnaire regarding health education. And she continues to take the lessons from this course into her work. We're so proud of her. Next slide, please. And this is Shayla Manitobi and Hoigner. And I just want to say a few things about her beautiful journey. So again, she credits this course with giving her the tools to write a culturally tailored health and wellness program for Native youth. And she's received grants now to continue this work, and really feels like the course was influential in bringing this idea to fruition. And then the next profile, the last one that we'll show, this is Gail Salas, and she was one who actually took the course, but then went on to finish the entire certificate program. And what is, I think, just so moving is Gail saying that she's sometimes been overwhelmed. How can she serve Native families? And the course actually helped her make connections to several things. One, about social determinants of health, like poverty, and how that affects mental health. She also was really celebrating that almost the entire faculty of the course are Indigenous scholars. So great role models to help grow our own, as the title of this seminar is. And finally, just really understanding the different types of career pathways in public health. She had thought that public health was nurses and doctors, but she learned it's epidemiology too. So just really good examples, as well as now sharing this information with her sister and her daughter, and hoping that they too will take advantage of this course. Thank you. So next slide, please. We just want to say thank you together. I'll hand it back to Michelle, but it's been a pleasure to be here today, and we're so grateful to have participated.
Yeah, that is everything that we had to share. Our contact information is there. If you join our listserv, which you can do just by emailing me, Michelle, you will get announcements for when we're calling for applications for the Summer Institute that Allison was just talking about, when we open up registration for our Native Children's Research Exchange Conference, among many, many other pieces of news, not only from us, but again, that are happening in Indigenous communities and with Indigenous communities all across the country. So thank you, everybody.
So I wanted to ask if folks had questions for the presenters, or if folks wanted to share anything about how you might be growing your own in your community. And I'm going to take the questions down so we can see our panel.
And we just want to remind everyone that you can put your questions in the chat, or you can speak or ask them verbally. Okay, so the first question our folks are asking if you can share the link for the listserv.
So what are your suggestions for how Native language teachers can get trained certificates in early childhood? So language teaching, learning.
I think I could address part of that question. I know one of the things that Stonewall College did is they were funded under a grant from the American Indian College Fund to develop a degree specifically in Cree language, with a focus on that they would be teaching the language. And I know Salish Kootenai College also has a whole, I think it's a bachelor's degree in Native language teacher education. And so I think connecting with some of these colleges and TCUs that have these programs and these initiatives going would be a good start. So I would just put that out there as possible one way to get some education on Native language.
Thank you. So I had a question for the Summer Institute, I noticed that that Cindy, you talked about, the healing your almond, and then there was the trauma-informed approach. And I was wondering, Allison, if you could maybe share how does that framework get pulled into the Summer Institute in terms of being trauma-informed and thinking about healing?
Yeah, I can even push that over to Michelle, but the syllabus has been carefully constructed to consider the social determinants and historical determinants of well-being in Indigenous communities. And I really do credit Michelle and Chelsea for selecting amazing Indigenous scholars, including people like Jessica Ulrich, who has brought in her connectedness framework, and others who have, really addressed issues of historical trauma and poverty and other community-based determinants of health for families. So, Michelle, do you want to elaborate on that?
I think you covered it well, Allison. And yes, Chelsea is actually on the call today as a participant, and so would like to recognize her as somebody who was really instrumental in 2021. We really thought very, very carefully about how we could ground our syllabus for the early childhood research with tribal communities course really as fully as we could within Indigenous ways of knowing and being. And as Allison shared, really being intentional about having as many of the faculty that presented in the course be Indigenous themselves. And so I think there's also a lot of care and concern kind of along the lines that you were talking about, Cindy, to really meet students where they are and embrace whatever entry point that they're coming into the course from. And so what progress may look like for student A is going to look very different from student B. And I think we put in a lot of time, effort, thought, care, and concern are at the heart of really making the course a success for each and every one of the students who participate, and that they cultivate some part of their true passion in this work, whatever that may look like.
There's a question about whether there are plans or current collaborations for tribal higher education in Alaska. And I guess also, have there been Alaska Native participants in the TRC?
So thank you for the question. What I can tell you though is that we have received additional funding to expand the opportunities for tribal colleges and universities. We have received about $2 million. So right now we are in the process of identifying and thinking about the options for expanding the tribal colleges and universities opportunities. So yes, it's something that we are working on right now. So thank you for the question.
Thank you.
I would just add too that I know the American Indian College Fund has an early childhood initiative that they're looking at new participants. And so that might be if there's a tribal college in Alaska or an institution that could contact the American Indian College Fund. I know that they're supporting and really pushing early childhood as a very positive agenda for them.
Then there's one more question about whether for any of the presenters, are you aware of any sister programs or schools in Mexico that are doing similar type of work with Indigenous communities? And then partnerships on the East Coast too. So yes, Jennifer, we're going to be spreading all over the country there. Yes.
That is my dream, that we can get everywhere. Yeah, but for the I was thinking about New Mexico more. We do have Navajo Technical University that is supporting the partnerships in that area. And I do know that with this opportunity for the tribal colleges and universities and the new funding that is coming, we are also looking at the current scope of work of the tribal colleges and universities and how we can expand that through other opportunities too. So there is a lot of thinking behind the scenes and friends getting together and just brainstorming how we can expand this opportunity. So thank you so much.
And thanks so much, everybody, for attending. It looks like we had 78 participants. Fantastic. I hope that people reach out to the presenters and learn more about how we can make this happen in lots of places. So Brent, I think there's some things we need to do now, right?
Yes, there are just a couple of things. Thank you all again for joining us. And we hope that this has really been an informative time today. I know it was very informative for me. I learned a lot. Before we depart, though, I want to highlight 2 items. First, you can continue to visit the 2022 ACF IPC website to explore the virtual exhibitor halls. I know that typically that would be in person, but we have that virtual again this year. So you can view ACF grant recipient projects throughout the US and the Pacific Islands. And then also you can visit the ACF resource page to access more detailed information on the ACF program offices and partners. So I want to thank everyone. And then I just dropped the link into the chat for the survey. So if you could please complete that, we would really appreciate it. And I think that is it. That concludes our session.
Thank you, everyone.
To the agenda.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thanks.